Well, if that's not enough to get you in the mood for the World Cup, then quite frankly, you're watching the wrong show. Welcome to Football Focus. I'm in the chair this week as Dan's in Brazil for the World Cup draw. And we'll be crossing over to the Costa del Suipe shortly for some reaction from the England manager Roy Hodgson, as well as the USA coach Jurgen Klinsmann, who's had a very interesting draw today. Now, firstly, here with me to go through it all is Fabrice Muamba. Welcome back. Fantastic to see you.
Thank you.
Are you in the mood for it all now? It's only 6 months away.
I know, I'm excited to look forward to the World Cup, and it's been building up for a very long time now. Now, you know, we forget about everything that's gone on and we look focus on, you know, now the team's been announced, we can look forward to what's going to be a very exciting World Cup in Brazil. OK, well, if you haven't seen it yet, let's have a little run through some of those groups. Brazil, the hosts, will take on Croatia in their first match. And Group B really does stand out, doesn't it? The likes of Spain, Netherlands, Chile and poor old Australia. Yeah, I think, you know, Group B is the most fascinating one because you see the world champion Spain in action playing against, you know, the Netherlands, Chile and Australia, which should be great for them as well. And the Group C, it's probably the favourite, you know, in my opinion. I think Ivory Coast has got, you know, the best group for all African countries. And Group D, wow, you know, it's not going to be easy for England. Well, every single group in that tournament can be very difficult.
Yes, England, a couple of very tough fixtures. We'll be talking about those more shortly. Now, the final four groups have France. People in England in particular being a little bit mean about France, saying how lucky they are being in that group with teams they might have handpicked, having come through a qualifying playoff, of course. What stands out for you there?
I mean, Group G, you know, Germany, Portugal, you know, USA and Ghana. I think Germany, Portugal would be great, and Germany, USA, especially for Klinsmann to play against his country, and he's the manager of USA, would be exciting to watch. Belgium probably the strongest side, you know, the strongest team in that group there. You would fancy them. Russia with Capello, it would be good to see.
OK, well, thank you for now, Fabrice. We'll be hearing plenty more from him shortly. But let's head over to Brazil now and hear from the first time from Dan.
Yes, thanks, Jackie. Welcome to Costa del Suipe in the beautiful Brazilian sunshine here. We're here with Jonathan Pearce and Tim Vickery as well. We'll get some assessment on England and the rest of the World Cup draw in a moment as well. But Roy Hodgson, lots of talk before the draw about who England would get, about who all the teams would get. This is the assessment of the England manager with Uruguay, Italy and Costa Rica.
Well, it's a tough group, there's no doubt about that. I think a lot of people, of course, are saying they've been tough groups, but there's no doubt that with Uruguay and Italy, we've almost got two #1 seeds in our group, because Italy were very unlucky not to be seeded amongst the first 8. And of course, we know how good they are because we lost to them on penalties in the quarter-finals in the Euros. But the good thing, I suppose, is we do know each other, which isn't such a bad thing. And the other thing, I suppose, which has to some extent worked in our favour, that the game we've got in the north, where the conditions are going to be tough climatically, is against another European team, so we're both going to be in the same boat.
You spoke with great excitement when we spoke pre-draw. Do you consider that sort of worst case scenario, the group that you've now got?
Well, I think you're always hoping, aren't you, for you know, to be frank, there weren't many scenarios where you'd have been jumping for joy. There was a lot more scenarios where you'd have been thinking this is going to be very tough for us. So to get one that's a bit tougher for you doesn't surprise me at all, because, you know, there's a lot of travelling to be done in most of the groups, and our great advantage, I think, will be that being based in Rio, we've only got the one long trip, and then the other 2 trips to Sao Paulo and Belo Horizonte are relatively short trips and in the same neck of the woods.
Which is a big benefit, yeah, having been based in Rio, and that was what we were worried about yesterday, maybe having to potentially change that Rio base, but the 2 games very close in the group.
If we'd have had 3 games up in the north, then I think it would have been difficult, and there's no doubt that the climate in the north for European teams is going to be tougher. So I suppose in some ways we've got to regard that as an advantage, but it's going to be quite difficult to put a positive spin on the quality of our opponents, because even Costa Rica, you know, who are maybe the least known, they're a very, very strong team, and Jurgen Klinsmann was just warning me how good they were because they were in their group in the qualifiers.
Well, that is Roy Hodgson. Jonathan, you're one of our BBC commentators for the World Cup next summer. It's the teams, really, that England didn't want to get in that group. But Roy Hodgson said he was very excited about this World Cup draw, but not the draw he probably wanted.
No, I don't think it's the toughest draw. I think Germany have the toughest group, but Italy will remember how they outpassed England in Euro 2012. Uruguay have Suarez up front. He'll be on a man on a mission. Balotelli, man on a mission for Italy, hugely popular here in the Confederations Cup last summer. When Uruguay's defence looked very slow, when Italy's goalkeeper Buffon looked as if he was playing one tournament too many, you got Costa Rica, who were very, very good in qualifying in that region as well. We shouldn't underestimate Costa Rica. Remember what they did to Scotland in 1990. It's a very tough group, but if England win their opening game against Italy, suddenly Italy are on the back foot.
And lots of the managers, Tim, we spoke beforehand about the fact that it's heat, humidity and travel play a big part in where you play and who you play against as well. What do you think Hodgson's assessment of that will be?
I think, well, he's got the nightmare scenario for him, which is the long trip north to Manaus on the edge there of the Amazon rainforest. He didn't want to go there, but it's probably a price worth paying because the other two games are in temperate climes quite close to the team's base in Rio de Janeiro. So I think the trip to Manaus is probably a price worth paying.
And there is an argument, isn't there, Jonathan, that in the last World Cup, England had a group with Algeria, Slovenia and the USA, and fans were quite happy with that, but in the end, it didn't turn out to be a great World Cup. Maybe it's good to play some big teams early on.
And I think Italy will go into that opening game as favourites to win. The pressure will be on them, but the heat will be equal for them. The heat will be equal for players like Pirlo coming to the end. He retires after this World Cup. Chiellini at the back, you know, in the very, very autumn of his career. It's time for some of the younger Italian players to stand up and be counted. They haven't done so really yet. So I think if England can get off to a great start against Italy when there won't be as much pressure on Roy Hodgson's team, then I think they can still defy everything and get through this group.
Tim, we'll speak a bit more about Brazil and the other South American sides in a moment, but one thing is certain, when you speak to the managers after the draw, just had a word with Joachim Löw, the German manager, he would love to win a World Cup. Yes, everybody would, but to win it in Brazil would be particularly special.
And England's group, you know, is the only group with 3 world champions all together. So it really is a group which resonates with history, with Uruguay, with Italy and with England.
OK, as I said, we'll talk about Brazil. We'll have a look at the other elements of the World Cup draw as well with Tim and with Jonathan. But right now, Jackie, it's back to you in the studio.
Well, you see, that's one of the differences between Germany and England, is that the Germans can pick a continent they'd like to win the World Cup on. England would just quite like to get out of their group and maybe even into the quarter-finals. But do you think Roy Hodgson was being realistic there? Do you think he was being quite optimistic? Was he smiling behind us? But that was probably taken before the draw.
Yeah, I think Roy knows exactly. You know, they're in a tough group, and you've got 2 South American sides in a group which favour them in the sense where they're used to the weather, used to the continent, and you've got Italian who also have a winter break that help them in a sense where the guys can recover. So you know, it will be very difficult for England, but you want to make sure they start very bright against Italy, which is good.
Right, well, now, before every World Cup, there's one little chap that gets more than his fair share of attention, and that is the World Cup ball. Here we go. Feels like a beach ball. Is it supposed to feel like that, Fab? What do you reckon?
It's just my first time to have a look at it. It's a bit soft for me, but I'm sure when it be pumped properly and then the guys who play there, they'll get used to it. It'll be exciting. You know, it's just a bit too colourful. You know, too many colour in there for me.
Too many colours, but it's Brazilian. It's called the Brazuca, which means the Brazilian way of life. They are pretty colourful. You think there'd be some sand in there if it's really, truly Brazilian?
I'm sure it'd be easy to play in the beach when you're in Brazil on that one. But I think, all in all, I think it's great, but it's great for showcase for the World Cup. OK, well, I wish we were there. Wish we were there to be sampling it. So, who will be sticking a ball like that in the net come the summer? Well, we've been speaking to a couple of chaps who are pretty good at that.
For the England players, is this a good draw?
I think it's a good draw. It's a tough draw, but it's a good draw. I think they should be rubbing their hands with excitement. Obviously, 2 very difficult teams in there, Italy and Uruguay. We played Italy not so long ago and got knocked out of them. And possession of the football was a problem for us against them. But we held them. We didn't get beat off them. Uruguay with Suarez and Cavani will always be a threat. But I remember the draw being in '98 when I played in the World Cup. And, we were drawn with Romania, Colombia and Tunisia. And if I'm honest, it was probably a little bit flat because I was looking forward to some of the big boys to get the competition started.
I agree with that in many ways. You don't necessarily want too many of them in the group though. One's quite nice, quite pleasant, and because it gives you something to focus on. But you know, I don't think anyone takes anything for granted in World Cups anyway. So I think you approach it. I mean, I remember '86. I'd wait. You know, you wait half your life to play in in a World Cup, the big dream becomes a reality. And then we played in Mexico in unbelievably difficult conditions. It was over 40 degrees centigrade, so if they think it's going to, you know, they're complaining about 29, 30 and a bit of humidity. It was on terrible pitches with no one in the stadium, and we waited all that time, and we struggled in that one, but eventually got our act together against Poland. So conditions in South America are different. The grass is different, it's thicker, it's all sorts of things. The surfaces are not like the perfectly sort of carpeted Premier League surfaces that we play on. So there are different things to come up against.
When you go into a big event, you don't know how you're going to react straight away. Remember, in South Africa, in the previous World Cup, Spain lost against Switzerland in the first game. And probably, looking back, that was a key moment for Spain to win the World Cup. It was a moment that they had to change things around from a tactical point of view. I think they give them a real bad feeling starting the competition, and that put them in a position where they had to perform. So I think it's important that you got that little bit of a margin of error just in case things are not working well early on, because out of 23 players you could make many combinations as a manager, and sometimes having that second opportunity in a big event helps.
We're still here with Tim Vickery, our South American football correspondent, and Jonathan Pearce, one of our BBC football commentators as well. We're going to talk about Brazil in a moment and hear from David Luiz. We've mentioned Uruguay already because they're in England's group. But elsewhere, Tim, in terms of the South Americans in the draw, what is your thoughts on that?
I think Argentina have done very, very well for themselves, both in terms of their opposition and also in terms of where their games are taking place.
Remind us who's in their group.
They're against Bosnia, Iran and Nigeria. And that's a group where most of the games are in the south and the southeast, cooler weather, closer to Argentina. The Argentines will come across the border in numbers with great hopes.
And what about, I suppose if you look at the opposite ends of things, Jonathan, you've got Colombia who are probably rather happy and Chile who are very disappointed with the draw.
Well, Chile are in with Spain and Netherlands. That's a great first game, by the way, isn't it? Spain against the Netherlands, a repeat of the final 4 years ago. Chile outplayed England at Wembley, they outpassed England, but they came across a very difficult Brazil side recently in a friendly and were well beaten by them. Colombia have Falcao up front, but an ageing centre-back pair. They're about 180 years of age between the two of them. They're really old. So I think they may struggle later on in the competition. They'll get out of the group, though, I think.
And when you think about Brazil, you talk to anybody here, Pelé said it during the draw, didn't he? That not just that the hope they can win, but there's an expectation that Brazil can win. Let's hear from one of their stars. It's David Luiz of Chelsea. We know him well. Here he is talking about his country.
FIFA World Cup.
In Brazil, everyone loves football, and everyone wants to see this moment. The fans expect for this result. It's not too much pressure. If you win the World Cup, you can stay there. If not, you need to live in Europe.
Oh, what an introduction from Neymar!
Neymar have this opportunity now, play at home. Everyone in the team wants to help him, and he wants to give everything for the team as well. I always speak with him and tell him, you don't need to change. You are a star now because you was and you are the same Neymar. Just play your football with the bad moments and the bad things you can give for me or for Thiago and for you protect you. And in the good moments you show your football and you be the best.
There's pressure on Scolari too to win his second World Cup, this time on home soil.
He knows how he needs to win, so it's a pressure for him, but he knows the way how he needs to work, how he needs to motivate players.
Do you think it's possible for a European team to win in Brazil?
It's possible for everyone, but I think Brazil will be so difficult to give this opportunity for another team.
Not this time.
Not this time. England sometimes just not believe. Sometimes you need to dream. When I talk with some people here and some English people and say, okay, we're in the quarterfinal and semi-final, it'll be a title for us, come on. Have a great generation, have a great players, have a great team. You need to think you can win. It'll be difficult for everyone, not just for England. But I tell again, not this time against Brazil.
And what's the dream for you personally next summer?
To be a champion of the world.
Well, those are the thoughts of David Luiz. You two gentlemen have watched plenty of Brazil over the years. Tim, they're in there with Croatia, Mexico and Cameroon. The hosts happy?
They've had a sensational last few months, you know, and even before the draw, Scolari, the coach, was saying we're going to win it. Now, we saw Pelé in the draw there, reminding us that he could recall his father crying when Brazil lost in 1950. He doesn't want to see his kids having to put up with him crying next year. So lots of pressure on them. They're doing very, very well, but the World Cup is so cruel. Sometimes not even a bad game, not even a bad half, just a bad 15 minutes can be enough to end the dream. Be a real test of their mental strength.
I think the Confederations Cup was huge for them because of the way that Neymar played. He needed a big tournament. He got a big tournament. He's a superstar in the making. Solid midfield. He's known his best team for a year. I think they're the team to beat.
OK, well, that's Group A. Perhaps the toughest group is Group G. I'll just remind you of these four teams: Germany, Portugal, Ghana and the USA. The USA manager, somebody we know well on BBC World Football, it's Jurgen Klinsmann. Here he is. Jurgen, we spoke a few weeks ago about what would happen at this World Cup draw, and it's been a very tough draw for the USA.
Yeah, I think we probably have one of the toughest, or if not the toughest group, not only because of having Germany, Portugal with Cristiano Ronaldo, and Ghana, who kind of was always an issue a bit for the United States, but also because we have the worst travel schedule of all teams. You know, we're going to go to the Natal first, and then we're going to go to Manaus in the Amazon, and then we fly 4.5 hours to the next one. And so, but it is what it is. You know, a World Cup is all about, you know, taking on that challenge and make the best out of it. And we are ambitious enough to say we're going to give them so much trouble that we go into the second round.
At least when you think about it, OK, the geography is bad, the weather is going to be bad, but you don't have to do your homework on one of the teams in the group because it's your friend Joachim Löw and your country, Germany.
Yeah, I don't need to make a deep scouting report. That's a good one. And no, I mean, we have done a lot of work the last 2.5 years to bring the United States forward in the world of football. And we keep doing that. And we have players now in the Premier League, in the Bundesliga, in the Serie A, all over the place. They can compete. You know, we're gonna be ready for those teams. And I'm confident we're going to go in the next round.
I know it'll be a summer full of travelling, but I do hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Well done, Jurgen. Good seeing you.
That is Jurgen Klinsmann, not too happy with the draw for the USA. Gents, let's finish off with two assessments of some of the big European players. Tim, we'll start with you in Germany.
Well, it's a very difficult group, and it's an absolute nightmare in terms of the location and the time of the games. The Germans are getting a free sauna. They're really going to suffer in the heat.
And what about the world champions, the European champions, Spain?
I just thought there were danger signs for them in the Confederations Cup in the heat here. Some of the older players, the brilliant players, seem to be wilting. Is this one tournament too far for Xavi, Iniesta? Again, they've got question marks over a goalkeeper. A lot of countries are coming into this World Cup with question marks over goalkeepers. I cannot see Spain winning another World Cup on top of the European Championship again. Can't see it.
OK, let's put you on the spot then. A team to win it, Tim?
Brazil.
Got to be Brazil for you. Jonathan?
If Brazil don't win it, Argentina.
OK, thank you very much. Both gone South Americans, interestingly, which is fitting, since we're in Brazil at the moment, and the tournament will be hosted next summer in South America. We should be back here for that next summer, but right now I'll be back in the studio next week, by the way. Let's get back to Jackie.
Yes, Dan will be back, and I tell you what, he will not be wearing that shorts and T-shirt combination here in not-so-sunny England. But what are your thoughts on your specialist subject, which is African football? I mean, we saw Ghana go so close last time. They were robbed, they would say, by the Uruguayan handball of Mr Suarez, wouldn't they? But we've got Nigeria in there as well. Who could possibly win the World Cup for the first time for an African nation?
But I think Nigeria right now, they're the current African Nation Cup, and for me, I think it's very difficult because of the way African football is being played at the moment. And as long as the player focus on playing football and not worry about the other side of it, which is the money side, and that would be great, and that would be a good achievement for Africa.
Yeah, and in terms of Nigeria, again, if they not to focus on the money, as you say, but they're a tough group with Argentina, but you're always going to have one biggie in there with you. But then Bosnia, Herzegovina and Iran.
Well, Nigeria, they don't have an easy group, but to have Argentina, Bosnia, and Iran, you fancy them to be Iran or disrespect to Iran, and them being the African Nation Cup winners, and you would hope them to get through to the next stage, and just about tie in a tournament group and make sure you win the first game, and from there you can see what happens for the tournament.
Do you think Ivory Coast will be pretty happy with the group that they're in? Because nobody's really picking that group out and talking about it very much at all as being particularly difficult.
No, because they've been disappointed in every single African Nation Cup they played, you know. But pen and paper, if you look at the team, they are outstanding. And you've got the likes of Yaya Toure, who is, you know, the current African Player of the Year. And you expect them to go and to do well, but they never really play well in a tournament football, so which will be very difficult for them. But they seem like they've got the easiest group of all African team, and you hope that you help, you know, to see them to go through.
Is Yaya Toure the player that you would pick out as far as the best of the African nations is concerned? At this
present moment, he's up there with he's the best right now, and you know the Ivory Coast will be relying on him to play well, and if he's on song, everybody will be on it.
Yeah, and they're up against Greece, Colombia and Japan in that group. And a quick one on Algeria. They're a North African side in there with Belgium, Russia and South Korea.
I mean, you know, you've got Belgium, who's by far one of the exciting European team, and you go Russia and South Korea, which will be also very difficult for Algeria. But, you know, it's a very difficult group for Algeria. I can't see them going through this stage.
OK, well, thank you for now. And that's just about all we've got time for. Fabrice, it's been fantastic having you in here with us. You've whetted our appetites very nicely for next June and July. Well, don't forget, you can follow all the Saturday football news here from England on Final Score. And there's plenty more reaction to the World Cup draw on the BBC Sport website, and also on Twitter, on Facebook and on Instagram too. Dan will be back in the chair next week. He'll have an interview with South Korean hero Park Ji-sung and the Manchester City manager Manuel Pellegrini. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.